Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Horizons of Efficiency. I'm here with Sam Nasrolahi, who's principal at InMotion Ventures, Nahoko, who's director of SoftBank Vision Fund, and Rob, the co-founder of ZenCloud. So we've got the whole range here today. We're going to be hearing about how logistics and mobility startups come into being from an investment point of view, and then obviously we've got Rob here so we can hear about how that actually operates on the ground. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, because I find that often that's the best way to hear your perspective. So in just a handful of sentences, would you be able to just explain what your focus is at the moment and what you're working on day to day? Sam, can we start with you?
Yeah, of course. So hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. My name's Sam Nasrolahi, and I'm a principal at InMotion Ventures. So a little bit about InMotion Ventures. We are the CVC of Jaguar Land Rover. We were set up in 2016, historically with a very strong mobility-only focus. I'd say since I joined and we had a bit of a strategy refresh, our new investment verticals are enterprise software, industrial tech, and climate. So looking at a lot of the areas which are strategically relevant to Jaguar Land Rover. We invest pre-seed to Series A across UK, Europe, US, and Israel.
Perfect. Rob?
Nice. Rob, co-founder, CEO of ZenCloud. Founded the business 11 years ago, ran an online store before, saw that shipping was really crappy, and I thought, hey, let's build some kind of solution to solve that. So I did that. Today, ZenCloud serves around 25,000 online stores throughout Europe. It's backed by, among others, by SoftBank, so thanks for that. And yeah, we're still growing really fast, and yeah, that's it.
Nahoko, take it away.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm an investor with the SoftBank Vision Fund. We are a global fund that invests in late-stage technology. As of today, we have about 470 portfolio companies, of which about 60 of them are based out of here in Europe. I'd like to say that we have a very strong logistics portfolio. SoftBank has been a very happy investor in ZenCloud since 2021. I personally work very closely with Forto. Forto is a leading digital freight forwarder based in Europe. And what they do is they use technology to disrupt freight logistics in sea and air and rail. And yeah, we're here to invest in latest companies.
OK, so looking at it from the investment perspective first, Sam and Nahoko, I'd love to know what distinguishes a startup at the moment, or what are the particular verticals that you're really interested in right now? What's your investment thesis, essentially, at this moment? Nahoko, if you want to go first.
Sure. At SoftBank, we would go through, I guess, the usual checkboxes, right? We look for scalability, project market fit, management team capability, and all of that. But for all the investments that we do, our backbone is always AI. At our core, we believe that this AI transformation, will reinvent existing industries, but also create new ones. Masa-san, our founder, is a firm believer that AI is so fundamental to society and to people's lives that it will become so ubiquitous, like almost like driving a car or using electricity in your day-to-day lives. So whether it's a AI-first company or existing businesses that tries to integrate AI into what they do and enhance efficiency, it doesn't really matter. But most important is that we like to work with founders who are meticulously creative and are opportunistic in the way that they approach how to use AI.
I'm a real stickler when it comes to the term AI, so I'm going to drill down on that, if that's OK. Which applications of AI are most interesting to you at the moment? Is it computer vision or data analytics or anything like that?
Good question. Maybe talking a little bit about logistics, because I think we have common themes here. So 2024, I see that it's a year of transformation. There has been a lot going on in the logistics sector. And after weathering a bit of a storm, this year is definitely focusing on the tech roadmap. And when it comes to Forto, they're trying to prioritize on what they do best to come out of this industry turmoil stronger than ever, right? So some of the key workflows that they're working on is using Gen AI to streamline some of the operations, for example, contracting, something very basic. Or working to create a transport management system so that can act as a co-pilot of the agents to enhance productivity. So there's a lot to be done, especially being smart about collecting data, utilizing data, and enhancing the speed at which businesses will utilize AI and machine learning into their businesses.
Sam, could you tell us about what makes you want to invest in a company?
So I guess giving a little bit more detail around the investment kind of theses that we have in terms of our verticals. So we look at enterprise pretty broadly at the application, the infrastructure, and the kind of deep tech level. So there's a lot of AI applications there which I can speak to. In the industrial side, we're looking at the whole value chain from design to actually manufacture to supply chain, all the way through. And climate, we're looking at pretty broadly as well. So on the mobility-related side of things, we look a lot at EVs, batteries, charging, software, hardware, but then also more broadly in terms of carbon capture, biodiversity, and et cetera. In terms of the stuff that we really look for within a startup, it's probably quite similar to everything that you've heard before in terms of we're looking for great founders who are solving big problems in a really smart way. But in terms to make that a little bit more tangible, and maybe touching to the AI piece that you were speaking to earlier, we, for example, thought that there was this initial wave of everyone getting quite scared about investing into AI applications because there was this fear that everything is this wrapper which is around Gen AI. So it felt like that kind of investment side was quite low, and there was a lot of over-indexing into the AI infrastructure layer when we kind of felt that actually the really big problems weren't really quite clear yet. There was a lot of movement within how the OpenAI and other kind of application platforms were really shaking up. So our investment thesis there was we really wanted to hone in on the big problem, which was deploying AI at scale in production, and we felt that those kind of use cases weren't really being seen yet. So part of our investment thesis was actually to look at, okay, the enduring problem from our perspective is not, solving specific issues within the infrastructure, like developer tooling space, but actually one of the big problems was that enterprises were having really slow adoption of Gen AI because they weren't able to trust the results from the software layer that was built on top of these models. So that was our kind of first investment into the AI infrastructure space, which was a company called Verax AI. So that was kind of our thinking in terms of being patient and really finding what those actual long-term enduring problems are.
And then has that investment had a kind of snowball effect on your other ones, I would imagine?
So that one was our kind of first one in the AI enterprise space. We did the pre-seed in January. And that's already, I think, really flown from lots of enterprises really wanting to build their own software on top of AI infrastructure in terms of creating kind of internal chatbots before they really move to external kind of use cases. And I think looking at that one has really been able to develop our mindset for future investments as well.
If we're talking about AI infrastructure, I feel like, Rob, you're the perfect person to come to. How has AI changed the way that SendCloud operates and the way that global shipping as a whole operates?
Yeah, so we power shipping for 25,000 online stores, which means we gather millions and millions of data points every day. We know which carrier, if it's DHL or DPD, from which location is the fastest, the cheapest, has the lowest CO2 emissions. And we increasingly give this back to merchants. And so the first step in our, I would say, AI play is, first step is to gather all the data, then structure it, recommend to our merchants, right? So use DHL for shipments to whatever, from UK to Italy because it's faster and they use electrical vehicles in the last mile. Maybe use DPD for internal shipments within the UK because they use EVs here locally and they have the best sortings. And so we can, first of all, gather a lot of data, then recommend, then automate so that they leave the decision, our merchants leave the decision over to us. And then, then I think we have a lot of proprietary data. We can compare everybody with each other. And I think that's something relatively unique in the e-commerce shipping space. Mm-hmm. So that's how we see it. And we're using machine learning already for years, right? We never branded ourselves as an AI company. I don't consider us an AI company, actually, but anyway, yeah.
And when it comes to AI in general, you use so many different machine learning applications that now that there is this massive transformation and there's so much talk around it, how do you yourself pass the hype from the value when it comes to AI products and services for SendCloud? Yeah,
look, I think there's a massive hype going on, right? I think AI has been, of course, has been there for many years. And now, of course, ChatGPT kind of made it massive for consumers, the adoption, but it's been going on for many, many years. So I think not that much has changed, right? Of course, massive amounts of funding are going into it today. Some good will come out, some bad will come out from my perspective. We're keeping an eye on it, right? So we're keeping an eye on newest technology. We're using whatever we can use. So we use, for example, a couple of Claude 3 model to pre-fill customs documentation for our merchants, right? It's something very annoying to automatically generate the HS code which you need for taxes. So those are some practical ways we use it. Honestly, I think there's a lot of hype around it today. So I would, if I was an investor, I'm clearly not, and I'm a bad investor, but I mean, I would steer away from it personally today. I think what SoftBank has been doing before, right? They've seen this space already for years, so they were there already before, at least. When I spoke to Masa, it's been a while, but he already was going on about AI back in 21, and I knew he was going on about it before already. So he's, yeah.
Being such a global company that SendCloud is, how does the availability of the data that you have across so many different geographies mean that you can do more than other logistics companies?
Yeah, look, if you're DHL, you only have DHL network. It's very simple. So we have all the networks in the world, at least in Europe, right? So we have all the networks in Europe connected, so we can, yeah, not very, I think almost nobody has that, right? So we are the only ones gathering this data, providing it back to the carrier, providing it back to the online store, and to the consumer as well, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sam, I know that you mentioned to me that you have pivoted away from mobility investments in 2024. Why that decision and why now?
Yeah, so I guess at the time when we kicked off in Motion Ventures, there was just so much happening within the mobility space, as there still is. But I think right then we were seeing a lot of explosion from like different types of kind of business models, and there was a kind of very strict strategic focus to looking at the luxury experience, the kind of consumer applications. And we did kind of 5 years of that, which we kind of saw as our almost Fund 1 thesis. And then kind of looking back to Jaguar Land Rover, we saw that actually there was lots of key opportunity areas which were a little bit broader as well. So as I mentioned, like JLR is an enterprise, it is a manufacturing company, so industrial tech is particularly relevant. And I think JLR, very similar to other automotive companies and lots of very general companies, is very strongly focused on sustainability and climate and kind of what new aspects they can do there. So that was part of our pivot to really see that actually there's lots of other types of companies which we saw that there was huge value in us kind of learning more about.
Mm-hmm. And Nahoko, with your logistics and like obviously more mobility-focused portfolio than Sam's, how do you envision the mobility ecosystem opening up over the next couple of years?
I think, I mean, it's mobility. We see it as any other industry, right? And we talked about hype, how AI could be very hypey, but when there is the right use cases for this technology, I think it's going to accelerate the digital transformation more than anything else. So we don't really focus on one specific industry and try to predict where it's going. We're looking at, I think, more on the micro level, looking for founders who can actually be agile and try out this technology. And I think, SendCloud is a really good example where, while you didn't have the AI technology itself in-house, you can also go and acquire. Mm-hmm. And that's one way of trying to create efficiencies and accelerate your digital transformation within the existing business model, right? Yep. So we look for founders who can do that, and not so much specifically in looking at how mobility is going to be changing in the next 5 to 10 years. If that makes sense. Mm.
And as these technologies are evolving so quickly, I know that Rob, in particular, SendCloud operates so internationally. It's a question for all of you, really, in terms of regulatory frameworks and what they mean for the logistics and operations and industrial tech sectors in the next couple of years. What's catching your eye, and are there any particular regulations that concern you or that you think need to come into force? Rob, should we start with you?
Regulation. I personally dislike rules, so I hope there's less regulation. Look, there will be, of course, I think on the environmental side, I think there's a lot to do in shipping, logistics, right? So I hope that they figure that out. I'm not sure if regulation in that case is the right assumption, but I'm the wrong person to ask about rules. I prefer no rules, no guidelines, no processes. Yeah.
Nahoko, are there any regulations that are on your mind or in discussion in your boardrooms at the moment?
I think the topic about privacy, when it comes to data collection and how to use data, that's very, very relevant. But it's still very much an evolving legal structure that needs to be determined based on how people will be using it, how people will be, I think, driving the transformation here, right? So I think it's too early to tell what's going to be most relevant, but you need to kind of play it by ear and see how it goes, especially in Europe.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a hard question. Do you have any suggestions if you were drawing up these regulations where it comes to like location data and privacy? How would you design it?
Look, I'm definitely not an expert on this. I would not be in the most comfortable position to comment on that, but I think we as investors, we just need to be very mindful and be in sync with the founders that we work with so that we're not violating any of these regulations.
Yeah.
Sam, how are you talking to founders about regulations or to other investors?
Sure. So we look at it from the enterprise angle, just as you mentioned, in terms of new AI regulation coming in, data privacy, data security, which really kind of impacts all startups and all industries. Specifically for us as well, automotive is a highly regulated industry, from the semiconductors which they use to the tier 1 relationships to the cybersecurity indications which need to be had as the vehicle becomes more software defined. There's a lot of regulation that's already there. So we very much keep a tab on it as investors, but then we also very much look to startups to educate us in terms of what kind of specific regulations are kind of relevant for them as they build out their companies. And I think the JLR link there is also really helpful, that particularly when we invest in the very early stages, and if there is a collaboration with Jaguar Land Rover, they can be a subject matter expert to educate the startup as well, and to really support them and bring in the right partners to make sure that all the regulation is really being adhered to.
That's really interesting. What kind of consciousness do the founders who you're speaking to, or maybe who are pitching to you, what kind of consciousness of regulation do they generally have? Are they really hot on it, or are they more focused on their idea?
So I think it really depends on the stage. I think like kind of when you're getting to the more Series A style companies, we very much look to them to already have this within their roadmaps or even already kind of built out. So I think that's very much a bit of a hygiene factor at that point, because they're already selling to customers. I think more at the pre-seed level and sometimes even the seed level, we really look for them to have expertise within the realm that they are, and to definitely be aware of the regulatory kind of environments, even if they're not actively working on it at the moment. And then just to have that awareness of, okay, these are the steps which we need to tick off in this order, and to prioritize it within the kind of product roadmap.
Perfect. Guys, thank you. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
So much.